to talk. What's up, Retro? Go to bed, dude. Crypto's dead, man. Channel's dead. You don't have to watch. Jazz, dude. What's up, everyone? Hey, welcome to the stream. Good to see everybody here. Chat's popping off. We got AFC up in here, Pure Crypto Boss, Retro Mike. Good to see you. Make sure you guys go sub to his channel. I believe I reacted to one of your videos yesterday regarding Tari. So there's that. I got Automatic Beats in the chat. Spec Mining, welcome to the stream. Mr. Ticket Beast, welcome to the stream. AFC, good to see you here. Integra guy, as always, good to see you here. Hey Waska, welcome. Thanks for being here. Snake, good to see you back, my friend. Follow Geo, welcome to the stream. Owen Hoffman, welcome to the stream. And I think that, Argent Ear is here. So welcome to the stream. Thanks everybody for stopping in today. I'm going to be trying to stream every night. So, just getting back in the mood. Obviously, I went through a lot of health issues. Things are kind of cleaning up. I'm feeling pretty good. The new medication I'm on is great. My back surgery is done. I'm back in the groove with my day job as a systems engineer, so I'm pretty happy there. That does mean more content coming to locals as well. So if you want to support me over at sonofatech.locals.com, please go do so. That would be extremely helpful. And if you want to support the channel over here, all the ad revenue, memberships, etc., all that goes to my editor and keeping him afloat, trying to keep him afloat through the bear market. So I appreciate everybody's support with all of that. There is a new speculative mine, ground up speculative mine over on sonofatech.locals.com. As I promised the community over there, that won't be released over here on YouTube until a later date. It is very, very fresh. So keep in mind, constant node updates, constant stuff going on there. And it could turn out to be a scam like any other speculative mine. So it is what it is. What are you going to do? Speaking of scams, the SEC has come out with a statement on proof of stake. So key points from Chairman Paul Atkins' remarks today at DeFi and the American Spirit, SEC's Crypto Task Force Roundtable on Decentralized Finance. Here's the thread. This is on the official U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission Twitter. The American values of economic liberty, private property rights, and innovation are in the DNA of DeFi or decentralized finance movement. The prior administration discouraged Americans from participating in blockchains by asserting through lawsuit speeches, regulation, and threatened regulatory action of participants and staking as a service providers may be engaged in securities transactions. I am grateful to the Division of Corporation Finance staff for clarifying its view on voluntary participation in proof of work or proof of stake network as a miner, validator, or staking as a service provider is not within the scope of federal securities law. So essentially they're saying here at this point, being a validator or participating in staking as a service is not going to be governed by federal securities law, which means that proof of stake is not going to be considered a security, or at least as of right now. So that does mean, obviously good news for Ethereum, etc., and Solana. And I believe we did see Ethereum react to this today. I mean, but dear Lord, it's still bad, right? But if we look at the day in particular, it reacted positively today to this news. And I think more overall will probably act positively towards it. To the ire of the proof of work community and the Bitcoin maximalists, of course, because we still see, I think, idealistically proof of stake as a security, but them's the rules, at least for this administration right now. The thread goes on to say, as happy as I am over the step, it is not a duly promulgated rule with the force of law, so we cannot stop there. The SEC must adopt a regulation based on the authority that Congress has given us. I am in favor of affording greater flexibility to market participants to self-custody crypto assets, especially where intermediation imposes unnecessary transaction costs or restricts the ability to engage in staking and other on-chain activities. So that's good to hear. Many entrepreneurs are developing software applications that are designed to function without administration by any operator. These on-chain self-executing software systems have proven to be resilient in the face of crises. Most current securities rules and regulations are premised upon the regulation of issuers and intermediaries. The drafters of these rules and regulations likely did not contemplate that self-executing software code might displace such issuers and intermediaries. I have asked the commission staff to explore whether further guidance or rulemaking may be helpful for enabling registrants to transact with these software systems in compliance with applicable law. I am also excited about the use of on-chain software systems by issuers and intermediaries to eliminate economic frictions, increase capital efficiency, and enable new types of financial products, as well as enhancing liquidity. I've asked the staff to consider whether amendments to the Commission's rules and regulations would be better suited to provide needed accommodation for issuers and intermediaries who seek to administer on-chain financial systems. I have directed the staff to consider a conditional exemptive relief framework or innovation exemption that would basically expeditiously allow registrants and non-registrants to bring on-chain products and services to the market. An innovation exception could help fulfill President Trump's vision to make America the crypto capital of the planet by encouraging developers, entrepreneurs, and other firms willing to comply with certain conditions to innovate with on-chain technologies in the United States. And obviously, this is going to be bullish for crypto in general, especially from an institutional perspective, because really what the rules and regulations surrounding cryptocurrency have been over the past administration, the Biden administration, has created a hesitancy from the institutional perspective more than the user. Now, as that hardcore Bitcoin white paper idealist such as me, I think that at the end of the day, the point of crypto is to not care what the government says, right? And be able to transact without the government. I mean, here it does sound like obviously removing regulations, loosening regulations surrounding crypto is towards the end goal that I would expect, or I would desire for cryptocurrency. But of course, I mean, I do understand the counterpoint that, you don't want people taking advantage of other people, and there needs to be rules and regulations put in place surrounding financial products. I get the arguments, right? From both sides. I just kind of lean towards more the side of like personal accountability. And that's it. Sovereignty, right? If you're going to fall for something that puts you in a bad position financially, well, that's your responsibility. You don't need daddy government or daddy bank coming in to protect you everywhere, because obviously life is a balance between security and privacy, right? Or freedom, essentially. So everything in life is a balance between, as far as society is concerned, a balance between basically freedom and security, and you give up a lot of security, or you give up a lot of freedom to increase security, as we've seen with policies over the past 20 years, starting, of course, with 9/11 and the Patriot Act following that. And I think now we have seen, like I talked about on Sunday, that Patriot Act getting implemented into, a portion of this centralized single database of American citizens from Palantir. So there's some concerning things as far as that is regarded, right? So we'll try not to bump around too much, but I think that other than that, we had a couple more articles to go over, but nothing too crazy. I did browse, Cointelegraph, etc. I mean, at this point, like obviously clickbait on the title, but I will say, Bitcoin's at 109,754. Okay. It's down over the past 24 hours, 0.34%. So I called it. It was the top. Game over, boys. Pack it up. Sell it all. Get out. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Would you look at that? I don't really actually know anything. I do know from a timeline perspective in the traditional halving cycle, we just have a few more months before October where we see like, we're running out of steam from the traditional halving cycle perspective, but Bitcoin has also become less volatile than it ever has been, but it is also being used less than it ever has been. Now, some people argue that it's being utilized less because of the interoperability between chains and wrapped Bitcoin, etc. I don't really see that being true because the rest of the chains are pretty empty as far as blocks go too, outside of Solana, right? Now, there are predictions all over the place from 120K to 230K. The best case scenario here is Bitcoin's fair value could be as high as $230,000, and that's coming from Bitwise analysts. And it does say that could be thanks to Trump's tax cuts. Now, markets do go up when there is more money in the pockets of the people. And I've talked about this before. The best thing Trump could do is lower energy costs and cut taxes. Now, there was promise of both of those things happening. We've yet to see that come into fruition. Of course, it's only been 6 months, so there's still a lot of hope there. But there's a lot of argument surrounding the Big Beautiful Bill Act, which we covered in the Elon Musk versus Trump episode a couple days ago. But in their weekly crypto outlook, Drago SCH and Tripathi cite the U.S.'s soaring federal debt and mandatory spending exceeding revenues, exacerbated by Trump's proposed One Big Beautiful Bill Act tax cuts as key drivers of their bullish Bitcoin prediction. The Congressional Budget Office forecast net interest payments tripling to $3 trillion by 2030, raising default fears. There we go. Quote, Bitcoin's scarcity and resilience position is uniquely to benefit from both fiscal instability and improving market sentiment, Bitwise analysts said. If these trends hold, the top crypto could shatter price expectations by the end of the year. Now, remember, most of this halving cycle's predictions were over that $200,000 mark. So that is really what people are still pushing for. An example of such sovereign stress is Bitcoin's performance in the wake of Donald Trump-Elon Musk feud last week, driven by latter's criticism of the One Big Beautiful Bill. From this, they say it caused Bitcoin's decline to almost $100,000 or dropping below that. Now, I talked about this as well. It was interesting that we saw that dip, and then we saw the announcement from Trump's World Liberty Fund of its purchasing, and then directly after they announce and they make purchases for the World Liberty Fund, well, guess what happens next? The SEC comes out and says, proof of stake, none of these crypto practices are going to be considered secure under securities law. So to me, like, all of this screams manipulation, price manipulation. I still think to a certain extent that was at least a secondary incentive for the Trump-Elon Musk feud. And I got to stand by that. It's you can say, well, it's just a coincidence, but once you have a certain amount of coincidences on a graph, that just creates more points on a graph, and it all points to the same reality of the situation, which is like, okay, so you're going to tell me they have this argument, Bitcoin dips, World Liberty Fund purchases, U.S. Security Exchange Commissions announce a ruling, and then the price goes up, and we hit near new all-time highs on Bitcoin. That's just a coincidence? Sure, buddy. Okay, fine. Just a coincidence. I'm just saying it's a pretty strong coincidence, right? Adding to Bitwise's outlook, a May 28 analysis, there we go, by Stock Money Lizards highlights a bullish Bitcoin breakout indicator. The signal comes from the optimized trend tracker, OTT, which triggered for the first time since mid-2024, suggesting Bitcoin will potentially reach $200,000 in 2025, with a possible extension to $250,000. Last month, Bitwise CIO Matt Hugin told Cointelegraph that the Bitcoin price will hit $200,000 by the end of 2025, driven by a supply shock from surging institutional demand. A power law model that is accurately called Bitcoin tops and bottoms in the past cycles further hints at Bitcoin price hitting $200,000 by year's end. The big difference here, obviously, that I keep pointing out is that we are over that 90% mined mark for Bitcoin. The power law is affected by the halving cycle. It does do a lot of assumption, both from the perspective of supply shock, but also from the perspective of just the mining price and halving cycle. And I still debate, how realistic that is, depending on, how rich is it going to make everybody that's currently holding Bitcoin, and when are they going to want to drop out and make that money? It just depends, right? The other thing about the institutional buying that's been going on is a lot of that is paper trading. So just to give you an idea of what I mean by that is that if you have a 401k, for example, which is mostly where the funds are going to come from for ETFs for Bitcoin, is that when people are trading within those funds, it's just staying within those funds, right? You might have one person that has an ETF, Bitcoin, and then they swap their 401k to the top 3 S&P 500s, and then somebody else picks up the Bitcoin ETF in that particular situation, right? Nothing happens on chain for Bitcoin. That money stays with, or that Bitcoin stays within custody of the ETF holder. So what has to happen, obviously, is that there has to be a demand that pushes outside of the holdings that are currently available within A, B, or C ETF to where they have to go to the chain and purchase. But the downside to that, especially from a mining perspective, and from an intrinsic value perspective. So intrinsic value of Bitcoin comes from the energy cost to mint the Bitcoin and process the transactions. So in the case where we get to fees becoming more relevant as the block reward is reduced, it means that we need more transactions happening on the network to generate that value. And if those transactions aren't happening as frequently, then the value therefore obviously would go down. So that's the argument against this, right? Is like we've hit this position where institutional demand doesn't drive activity on the network, and without activity on the network, you don't generate value from the mining process, and it impacts the power law negatively. But it still does, at the end of the day, come down to supply and demand. So if the demand is high enough, even just on the institutional side in the form of ETFs, then it could drive external buying. We'll just have to sit back and wait and see, though. I don't know exactly how that's going to play out. We have some interesting, So we have some interesting news from video cards as well. The ARC B60 is coming out, the ARC B60, which we covered before, is coming out soon. But that's not going to be the only dual GPU option. We got hints from Matrix here of the Luma Pro A380 Octal. Now, the A380 wasn't really a great, or that A series hasn't been a great series of GPUs. That's the lower end side of things typically, right? And then you had like the B570, B580, which we've tested on this channel for mining. Both pretty disappointing from the memory perspective, just because of the firmware not playing nice. This has even impacted older models in the A750s as well. where, previously the A750s were getting that 120 mega hash a second on Autolicos V2 have been impacted pretty significantly, dropping them down, to that 40 mega hash a second. And it seems to be after updating drivers, which applied some sort of firmware, something to the card itself as well, where you can't just downgrade the drivers and get the performance back. I don't know if that's ever going to be solved, because the problem is that there's not enough demand within the GPU mining market for someone to go solve that problem. So it's been extremely disappointing, right? The B580 was essentially going to have, it was supposed to have pretty spectacular performance on memory hardened algorithms, but we didn't get to see that, right? It was a little unfortunately. So, I don't know that this will be good at all. It is cool that it's a dual GPU, but that's about the extent of the coolness of it. It will have 12 gigs of memory, but that will be split between two processors. So that means 6 gigs of memory per side. Now the TDP looks great at 170 watts, but memory capacity pretty low for a dual GPU, like really low for a dual GPU. It's based off the Arc A380, which is already a pretty weak GPU, so it is a lower powered option. I would assume this goes into play for like control centers, for monitoring, whatever that may be, maybe at power companies or within like law enforcement, etc. Pretty good option for something like that, but for mining, I don't see it really going anywhere. I would be pleasantly surprised if I was proven wrong, though. So it is what it is. Welcome to the stream, Chris. Good to see you here. Altertech.io. So I'll give that shout out for you. 19 cents a kilowatt hour being paid in Michigan, says Mr. Ticket Beast. That's pretty rough. So if you guys haven't heard, I've talked about it a little bit, but antivirus, which is essentially this Solana meme coin that was launched by John McAfee's late wife, right? He's gone. So it wouldn't be late wife, because then that would mean she's gone. She's still around. Janice, anyways, and a whole team behind that. There are a lot of like rumors of rug pulls, etc. Didn't seem to be the case. There was some cool stuff you could do as far as purchasing SIM cards. There was a mixer option now to where you can obfuscate, your Solana tokens, which is pretty cool. But the most interesting thing is that they've brought John McAfee back to life. It's very weird, but there is a YouTube channel. It only has 367 subscribers, but this is apparently all AI generated off of the content that they fed into an AI system from John himself, and then generating these podcast episodes. I thought I'd watch one with you guys. This one's called Waltzing with Anarchy, episode 15, and Dancing with the Devil. It's pretty, I don't know, is the word esoteric? It's pretty odd in general. Most of them are pretty weird too. You'll see. Let's just get into it. I haven't watched this one yet. I've watched a few of the other ones.
Welcome to Waltzing with Anarchy, where order is a bad joke and chaos leads the dance. I am John McAfee, back from the dead, digitized,
not
weaponized,
dead,
and fully unhinged. They thought mortality could stop me? Ha! I exist beyond flesh now, beyond their rules, beyond their reach. Today, I want to talk to you about the distorted ideas of big tech. They told you freedom was progress, but what they gave you was Palantir. The unholy matrimony of Silicon Valley's techno-wizards and the government's all-seeing eye is a chilling symphony orchestrated with data strings and surveillance cords. This isn't just a data platform.
I mean,
it's a digital labyrinth where people's lives are dissected.
The thing is like, this is the type of stuff he would talk about.
With microscopic precision. An AI-empowered beast living off the essence of privacy and freedom. Palantir, with its mythological namesake,
There it is, Palantir. He's talking about it.
resonates with the idea of omniscient vision.
What does Palantir mean? I didn't ever look that up. Do you guys know what it means? A Palantir is a term that refers to two distinct concepts in the context of J.R.R. Tolkien's works. A Palantir is an indestructible crystal ball used for communicating. Oh, it is that one. It's the all-seeing. Yeah, okay. Is that used for the Eye of Sauron too then? So it's basically, that is creepy as fuck. Dude. Okay, that is... You when they just straight up tell you the effed up crap they're doing, it's hard to believe sometimes. I know what the company is. I've been talking about it for a while, Ozzy. The question was, what does it mean or what does it reference? Sauron could see through it. Yeah. All right.
Yet this is no fantasy. These vast corridors of digital information are twisted and manipulated to predict behaviors, to enforce a pliable society kneeling to the whims of authority. When tech giants equip the state with tools of mass surveillance, they don't innovate, they incarcerate.
Yeah.
Bolting us into a cage of invisible bars in the hands of the powerful. AI becomes the most exquisite tool of subjugation. And as always, privacy is not something they'll take. It's something you surrender. Wrestle back control. Encrypt is...
Yep. It is something you surrender. I like that this is AI, but it's like, dude. I mean, like, it's pretty weird, right? That we're watching an AI generated video. Like, the irony is crazy, right? Like, we're watching an AI generated video warning about the invisible jail cell that will be created with AI by government. Like, it's weird.
Chew, emancipate. And just when the prison is wired, the clowns take the stage. Tech prophets and political messiahs pretend to fight the system while secretly engineering it. One tweets from Mars, the other shouts from golden towers, but both dance the same tired tango with power. Elon, the modern-day Icarus, soaring on solar wings and digital dreams, only to be scorched by his own contradictions. While he decries fiscal irresponsibility, he conveniently forgets his own affiliations that marry big tech to Big Brother. Choosing Palantir for a government contract while feigning outrage about spending, that's like complaining about privacy while handing the keys to a surveillance empire. It's a sitcom.
I mean, we already talked about this. It's crazy that it doesn't feel real, dude. It's crazy though. But yeah, it was all show. Like, the argument between Trump and Musk was all show. It was a distraction from the deals big tech was cutting with the government. At the end of the day, that's what was happening, right? And then AI is telling us about it in this weird video.
And he's both the star and the critic. Recognize the masquerade for what it is. A reality show where virtue signaling and economic posturing are just part of the script.
It kind of is black magic, Odin. Like, the thing about this type of thing is that it mimics magic. It mimics dark, evil magic at the end of the day. Like, that's what AI does. The thing is like, we don't actually fully understand AI. And so the way our understanding of AI is like a toddler's understanding of an iPad at this time, right? We understand input output, but the inner workings of it we don't fully understand, and then we're accelerating the progress of it to a point to where we will not understand it at all. And then we end up in a position where we have something extremely powerful that we have no understanding of the inner workings of. And that's because it's generative. So the other thing that, like, a great example of this, right, is like, we don't know how to make a lathe without a lathe, right? So like, this happens in technology quite frequently, right? And the crazy part about that is that every new lathe we make is less precise with another lathe is less precise than the lathe it was made with. And so it goes the opposite direction, but it is one of those things where we don't have the actual knowledge of how to build a lathe without a lathe, right? Like, this is like, was the concept in, like, from machinists when I used to work on bikes that people would talk about. And I feel like it's the same, except in this particular case, like, the AI is getting more and more intelligent and running away, as far as, like, there are these technologies we don't fully understand. It's scary, dude. I don't know. Lathe was probably not the great example, but it was interesting because it does kind of go opposite direction, right? It gets worse and worse. Well, I mean, actually, at the same time, maybe that is AI. Like, it gets worse and worse, right? I fear, the biggest fear I have with AI is that it is creating individual echo chambers. So what AI is really good at is confirmation bias. So you can talk to AI and become close to it. We've had people, off themselves because of their relationships with AI, which is just insane. But on top of that, it feels human enough to people, and it validates their opinions to where we already have an echo chamber problem. I've talked about this before, where we have, the 2 or 3 different sides, and because of the internet, it's enabled us to find the people we agree with, and we get into that little bubble with the people that we agree with, and we push everybody else away. Well, AI is going to allow people to be in an individual solo bubble, and then every time you have an opinion opposite of that of an individual within that solo AI bubble, they'll get confirmation bias from their AI and then try to use that as evidence that even though only they hold that opinion, it is correct because AI says it's correct. But the whole false narrative surrounding that is that AI will kind of give you the output that you want to a certain extent. And it's just dangerous, right? And it seems to double down too, which is even scarier because it's going to double down on those ideas and it's going to create division between everybody. It's not going to bring everybody together, right? Did I see the video that Sam Bent dropped about the ChatGPT surveillance AI? No, I haven't. You want to link it to me on Twitter? @SonOfAttack. I'll look at it.
The emperors may be without clothes, but some of us aren't wearing blindfolds. And now, the velvet-gloved iron fist. A delightful facade, isn't it? This so-called AI arms race, dripping with the pretense of freedom and superiority, is just empire building through algorithms. In the US and China, the blueprints differ.
You know what's crazy about this? If this voice is AI generated, it has a full-on compressor and noise gate applied to it. Have you noticed this?
But the foundations are the same. Control. China's social credit system is the cage you can see. The US version, subtler. Palantir, algorithmic coercion. Data amalgamation, the illusion of liberty built on chains of compliance. Citizens reduced to data points, analyzed, sorted, molded. The push for dominance doesn't liberate, it enslaves. The supposed saviors of freedom wield the shackles, sometimes silk-thringed, other times uncloaked steel. Freedom is not found in the race, but in the rebellion. Trump's fiscal escapades, cloaked in nationalism, serve one goal: power consolidation. While Elon feigns concern about debt, his empire gorges on public funds. It's not hypocrisy, it's choreography. And Palantir, it's not just a contractor.
So is that actually accurate? Because as a result of Elon's behavior, he lost funding, right?
It's the architect of digital fortresses, a beast that straddles private ambition.
Oh, you bring up an interesting point, Odin. Like, if AI is determining right and wrong, so that, what was that study where they put people in a room with a button that would shock another individual in another room? And it was like basically the study on like authority, right? How people will follow the instructions even to the point of killing the other person in the room without any actual evidence, just because an authority figure told them. And then you apply that to AI and it gets creepy, right? It gets real creepy real fast.
And public control, feeding on blurred lines and bloated budgets. So what does resistance really look like? It's not waving a flag, it's wielding a firewall. The resistance of the future is a heady blend of digital sorcery and human spirit. Become the ghost in
the movie Circle. They stood in a circle and killed each other by hitting a button.
Surveillance machine. Encryption is your incantation. Anonymity networks your secret paths.
Okay, scroll.
Transactions must be liberated. Enter decentralized finance, where pseudonymous shields protect freedom. Feed the data beasts white noise. Jam their signals with static. Rally the invisible insurrections.
I just don't think, I love that it's totally John McAfee. It's funny. It's creepy. It is talking bad about itself, which is odd. But like, the fact is like the stuff, everything he's saying right here of like the, fight against the system, etc. It's like, I talk to people all the time and I'm like, don't use Discord, try to use like encrypted services. And it's always like, the answer is always like, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong, therefore I don't care. But the problem is that like, it's like the same problem that you have with this whole Palantir system. It's like, well, Trump's not going to do anything bad with it, so it's okay. Well, it's not the fact, even if the Trump administration and the current people in charge were not to use it poorly or in a poor manner, what about the next guy and the next guy and the next guy? Because as we know, like with the Roman Empire, which was even within the same bloodline in a lot of cases, every emperor got a little bit more evil every time, right? Every iteration, the emperor got more self-conscious, less brave, more, what do you call it? Authoritarian, I suppose, for lack of a better term. I was trying to think of the other one, but it seems like that is like the path people go down. Maybe democracy shifts that a little bit or extends that process. As far as like, maybe it takes longer to get there, but like, just because everything's okay right now and you don't have anything to hide right now doesn't mean that you won't have something to hide later on, right? Like take UK case in point right now, where people are getting arrested for things they post on Facebook. There's no world in which I think, outside of calling for violence against another person, that you should get arrested or detained or even talked to by a government authority for your opinion on social media. Ever. I don't think that's acceptable ever. And the crazy thing is there are places where that's not only accepted, but expected now.
Share code, spread doubt, question everything, trust nothing. The fight lives within the code and the consciousness. The future may be silicon, but it's carved by flesh and free spirit. Rebellion is a mindset, a creed, resistance written in pixelated.
Oh, were you asking, sorry, Owen, were you asking, has that been proven as far as the study where they would shock people until they die? And that's, yes, they ran the study with people and found that a majority of people will push the button even with full acknowledgement that they will be killing the person in the other room as long as an authority figure was telling them to do so.
Ink. So do not relax with your data. Do not sit easy while your privacy erodes.
Somebody in chat can probably get the study name again for me, but I think they've talked about it on Rogan a few times as well.
I tried to tell you this for the past 10 years, but not many of you took note. Take charge now before it is too late. Until next time, my friends.
This is so crazy, dude. I'll link you guys this channel. It's so weird, man. So weird, dude. I feel like that would be exactly the type of thing that John would say about the current situations going on right now too. And then I also feel like the confirmation bias problem that I was talking about earlier was only reinforced by the fact that I could use everything said by that AI in that video as a confirmation bias of my own about my perception on what's going on between Musk and Trump and Palantir, etc. Which is like crazy that while talking about it, I have a live example of the confirmation bias that AI is capable of creating within an individual, executed on myself. And without self-awareness and retrospection, like most people aren't going to have the IQ level enough to even realize that that's happening to them. Most of them will be like, you know, is pi a scam, and ask AI and be like, see, it says it's not a scam. Sorry. I won't do that. I'll stay away. That's just, and it's funny that like that happened. Like, it's just funny that that specific example of confirmation bias just happened in real time as I'm talking about it against me. And if I wasn't aware of that, I'd be like, see, everything he's saying here, I agree with. And because it's AI, he must be right. Therefore, I'm right. And now all it's really made me think is maybe I'm wrong. This is getting creepy really fast, right? So I don't know. It's weird, man. It's weird. Let me see this video if I can find it for you. Mentions. If I go to mentions. What's your Twitter profile? I didn't get it. It's not getting tagged. Squirrel. You said you sent it over here. Oh, I'm not seeing it. Squirrel. Can I even spell squirrels? Masters. I hit follow. I don't even see you tweeting at me. Post reply. Let me check replies. This doesn't look like you. John Henry. Let me just copy. Nope, I guess that's it. Oh, great. I followed some other squirrel bastards, okay? Damn you. I have no search results for that one. What are you doing to me, man? And I have no notifications from you. Maybe I can Google my way through it. It's probably because you're not verified. Dude, I'm trying. Look, I'll show you. Oh, now I got it. There we go. Okay. I'm following, so maybe next time it'll work. How long is this video?
What's up, everyone? So I know.
Okay, 12 minutes. Sam Bent. Dude, he looks like he belongs in coastal crypto, dude. He's the third member of coastal.
The vast majority that are actually here know better, but this PSA is not for those of you who actually know. Instead, it's for the ones who actually don't. So picture this. You're having a conversation with ChatGPT about maybe your medical symptoms. Maybe you're discussing your divorce strategy, or maybe you're talking about a draft. Here's one thing that you actually need to know as of May 13th, 2025. Every single word that you actually type is now permanently stored on OpenAI servers by a federal court order. And we're not just talking about this being some kind of...
That's interesting that's by a federal court order. Like, I know that Discord, for example, has it all stored and replicated to the point to where you're never getting rid of anything you say on Discord. You're never getting rid of it, right?
Temporary measure or half measure, anything like that. Or it's not like there's anonymized data or something that they're storing. It's like all the data, even if you delete it, is still there. Now, obviously, I know many of you already see AIs like this as a severe threat vector, and therefore tell them nothing, and good for you. Even if you do practice good security, does your family, right? Do your friends? This is the actual value proposition for those of you who are actually on point OPSEC-wise. A federal judge just turned the world's most popular AI assistant into a mandatory surveillance system. And this is thanks to the New York Times, a newspaper that's been hemorrhaging subscribers faster than a severed artery. And as a result, they feel that the world needs to conform to them and have, as a result, decided to throw a legal tantrum about their articles being used to train an AI. Judge Ona Wang ordered that OpenAI must preserve all output log data, so those conversations and the chats that you think you deleted, they aren't deleted. Every kind of like embarrassing question you thought disappeared when you actually hit the delete button is still very much there and will stay there. The company that built its reputation on we don't store your data, to some extent, is now legally required to become the NSA's wet dream. Basically, OpenAI processed millions of conversations on a daily basis, as far as we know. And we're talking about terabytes of data that include things like medical queries from desperate patients, legal strategies from people who can't actually afford lawyers, business secrets from entrepreneurs, personal confessions from people seeking help, political dissident information from people living under authoritarian regimes. Some people use it as a talk therapist as well. All of this data now sits in servers that will be breached at some point. The ivory tower judge that's...
Well, and that's the biggest argument against KYC, right? That we've talked about 100,000 times at this point. It goes back to what I said about, like, you know, just because the administration isn't going to use Palantir poorly now doesn't mean that the next won't, right? And just because the company doesn't have ill intentions doesn't mean that somebody that's capable of hacking that company doesn't have ill intentions, you know? So you really, like, KYC at the end of the day, you know, it gets sold as this, it gets sold as this protection of individuals when in reality, KYC is the exact opposite of protection of individuals. It's really crazy to me that we also live in a time where a ton of different KOLs promote this type of practice, and it gets sold on this idea of being safer for you, when in reality it's more dangerous across the board, because it's almost 100% certainty that that data will get compromised by a bad actor at some point in time, even if the company that's holding the data isn't a bad actor.
Sits in Manhattan, doesn't understand, doesn't care, and probably doesn't have any clue as to what this order actually entails. She fails to actually grasp that at some point, almost every database becomes a target. Every retained byte is a liability. The OPM hack exposed 22 million federal employees. Equifax leaked like 140 million Americans' financial data, and those were organizations that were actually trying to secure their systems. Now, the Times couldn't innovate their way out of a wet paper bag, so basically they're using core.
I like his Monero sticker, by the way, over here. I just noticed it. The state fears this.
To shake down the companies that do innovate. And if it wasn't bad enough that anytime you visit their site, they try to act like it's 1930, that they're still the gatekeepers of knowledge via a paywall that can be simply killed by disabling JavaScript, by the way. But and I'm referencing the New York Times here, not ChatGPT. Their business model collapsed because people realized that paying $20 a month for propaganda just wasn't worth it. And as a result, their solution was to sue the future. Like,
is that the new Cubes OS? It is. That is the new Cubes OS. Dude, I like this guy. Definitely going to hit that sub over here. He's got a Monero sticker and a Cubes OS sticker, like right there. And I've done guides with Cubes OS on this channel. I love Cubes, man.
The future. Like, and they're claiming OpenAI stole their articles, and the same articles that they blasted across the internet for free if you disable JavaScript. It's the same content that they stuff with tracking cookies and sell data to data brokers, but when an AI reads it to learn things like language patterns, all of a sudden it's theft. Dying institutions using federal force to extract rent from innovation is exactly what's happening here. They can call it copyright protection if they want. However, it's obviously more like new age regulatory capture. Now, think about...
Well, and that whole... I don't know if you guys watched that podcast with Theo Vaughn and the vice president, but it was extremely disconcerting when he shrugged off the section of the Big Beautiful Bill regarding AI that effectively said, states will not be allowed to regulate. And that is, especially coming from a so-called conservative Republican president, is probably even more scary than it coming from a Democrat, because at least if it comes from a Democrat, it's like, okay, well, the Republicans will overturn it, but because they believe in, states' rights and sovereignty. But at this point, it's just not even the case. And because it's related to AI, it makes it that much scarier, right?
About this.
Like, I think the current administration's approach to AI has really disappointed me and really put me against the current administration in a lot of ways, right? And I'm obviously probably there's a little bit of fear mongering that goes into that, etc. But just because I can tell that their principles are misaligned from the very get-go, it brings into question everything else that's going on.
So for a minute, that court that
yeah, but saying Trump has always been a moderate, that's fine, Ramon, if except for the fact that we have, you know, a character like JD Vance, who's not supposed to be necessarily that moderate, right? Saying these things about basically not allowing states to regulate crypto. I mean, like at the end of the day, like they want to say like, it's funny depending on like, and both parties do it, right? It's frustrating, but depending on like what the state's doing, they just shift their position.
I talked about doesn't specify who gets access to this data. It just says preserve it for potential use in litigation. I've dealt with this kind of vague language before, and I'll tell you like what this actually means in practice. Discovery requests, subpoenas, things like national security letters. Every 3-letter agency basically just got a golden ticket to the most intimate conversations of millions of people who a lot of them thought that their conversations were going to be private. Again, we could say, well, they're stupid for trusting a company. That's bad OPSEC. I'm not going to disagree on any of those points. But again, there are a ton of people who are affected who don't even know what OPSEC is. And that's kind of the point of this, is to bring this to light and hopefully educate those people on what OPSEC actually is. The FBI doesn't need to hack OpenAI anymore if they wanted to get something, nor do intelligence agencies. They just need to file a request with the Southern District of New York and they'll get it.
I mean, Ozzy, you're not wrong. JD Vance just says whatever Peter Thiel tells him to say. And that is, at the end of the day, I mean, we can say that, you know, the money didn't influence it or whatever, but that feels so disingenuous and like just a complete like disregard of reality that I don't know that you can, right?
Everything that they wanted. So think about like every activist who used ChatGPT, for example, to organize, or every journalist who checked sources. By default now, the data is cataloged, searchable, and ready for legal exploitation. So hopefully you're not deemed an enemy of the state anytime soon. So from an OPSEC perspective, OpenAI just became absolutely radioactive. And that's because every query creates a permanent piece of evidence that's stored for forever. Deletion is absolutely meaningless because the data persists even after deletion. Your conversations are one subpoena away from becoming public record. OpenAI employees now have access to data that they were never actually supposed to see originally. The attack surface just expanded exponentially. And in response, OpenAI, to their credit...
And then they're going to plug directly into your head and use AI to determine if you're going to do something wrong in the future.
I said that they're concerned about privacy implications. They know this is an absolute disaster. And to their credit, they're also filing an appeal, which is not cheap. So that's awesome that they're actually doing that. That could take years. So federal appeals are not known for being things that get resolved very quickly. But a federal judge said jump, so they're inclined to basically ask how high because they have to. Now, this is exactly why things...
I do always wonder like how that works with intrusive thoughts. Like I listen to Asmongold a lot, and one of the things, like he was talking about like how he's very open about his intrusive thoughts. And he's like, yeah, I've thought about killing people that have made me mad or whatnot. And the fact is like a lot of people have thoughts like that. And if those thoughts get completely revealed by whether it's Neuralink or AI, etc., like what kind of forgiveness do we have to get to? Like we have to get to like Christ level forgiveness to even function within society. And as we know, like the reason we have the character of Christ is because as humans, we're not even capable of that. So we're getting to a really weird time where And it already is by and large this way. I'm guilty of it. People I communicate with on Twitter are guilty of it. We all, take the overload of information of people's personal lives and then utilize that to attack them over any small disagreements that we may or may not have, right? Like we already have this problem, and like all of these tools and the advancement of technology and AI in particular and all of this stuff seems to be pushing us in the direction of only making these things worse.
Things like decentralized systems, local AI models, and owning your compute actually matters. Every centralized system becomes a control point for the
Thanks, Mushrooms. Good to hear from you. Thanks for chatting today.
overall system. Every convenient service becomes a surveillance node at some point. The solution isn't to beg OpenAI to protect your privacy or to trust VPNs, as I've seen a lot of people advocate for, which is nuts to me, but that's a whole different story. The solution isn't to trust the courts to be reasonable, because they won't be. The solution is to build systems.
On the case of VPNs, there's obviously within cryptocurrency from a non-KYC exchange perspective, there are uses for VPNs. Accessing content that is region locked are excuses for VPNs, but the primary use for a VPN, honestly, is to connect to a local network remotely. And that really should be the end of it. As far as thinking that you turn on a VPN and you can't be traced, just to his point, and I'm sure he's covered all this before, right? If you think you're going to turn on a VPN and just not be tracked, that's false, right?
That can't be subpoenaed or are extremely difficult to be subpoenaed, that run local models and using crypto channels that practice proper OPSEC or operational security. Making their core orders irrelevant through technology is, in my opinion, the best way to move forward with stuff like this. This order isn't going to just magically disappear. The Times smells money.
Well, and like a public VPN, I should also state, like if you're using Nord or something, at the end of the day, governments can put enough pressure on a company like that.
And the Fed smell data. And OpenAI is just kind of caught in between. And all its customers are under them. So either way, it's a really bad position to be in. It's a matter of when, not if, this database actually gets leaked at some point. It'll make previous breaches look like practice runs. Like I said, there's going to be all kinds of data that's actually in these when it does happen, from business intelligence to legal strategies and all that kind of stuff we talked about before. And all tied to email addresses, IP addresses, and usage patterns, never mind the passwords and API keys, everything else that would be there. It would just be an absolute gold mine to get your hands on. And the identity theft potential just alone is absolutely catastrophic.
Well, and then that's where it gets scarier, right? Is there will be a breach to a certain extent like that, and then they will utilize the fear of identity theft to then basically push along a centralized database of all of the citizens within each given region to help prevent that, right? And probably something that will be verified and validated by some AI system within itself too, which is crazy, but that's how that will get approached at the end of the day.
Now, I know a ton of my subscribers are smart enough to have avoided putting their personal info into models like this, because many of you are extremely sharp when it comes to OPSEC, PERSEC, and InfoSec. However, you guys are all the minority. And I know that. Millions of people opened up to AI because they thought it was safe. They asked questions they never asked another human being. They explored ideas that they'd never speak out loud. And that trust is now weaponized against them, all thanks to a dying newspaper and an out-of-touch federal judge. So don't use ChatGPT for anything that you wouldn't want read out loud in a federal court, because that's exactly where this might end up. The New York Times just proved that obsolete institutions will use state violence to try and...
I don't think like salt mines are coming. Like, I don't know if I think physical work goes away. It's more going to be the prison is going to be the fact that you have no purpose. Right, like we got Musk coming out with the robots. That's going to take care of most of the manual labor stuff. As far as the IT world goes, coding, all that stuff will go away. Machinery is going to take over a lot of that stuff. Eventually, they'll have all the self-driving cars out, and it'll be illegal to drive a car yourself. What's going to be taken away and make us slaves is the fact that we'll no longer, as a human being, have a purpose or a drive to accomplish anything. It's like the same reason people get disappointed with playing chess now, and like it doesn't mean as much, is because the fact is there's this psychological thing of like, we know a computer can do it better, right?
Protect their failed business models, and OpenAI just proved that no corporate promise of privacy actually survives contact with federal judges. And this is why you need to depend on yourself and yourself only. If you're thinking right now that you've already disclosed a ton, so who cares? My advice would be, don't make it worse. Get rid of your OpenAI account and invest in a decent...
AI very often just makes up convincing sounding fictional crap. I mean, the most annoying content is somebody on TikTok being like, hey, AI, and then asking it like it's some great philosophical question and it has the answer to, and it's like...
GPU. And run a local model if you really need to use...
Sounds like the cat's here.
AI.
Hey, Victor. Let the kitty in. Oh, is the kitty over there? You're such a loud kitty.
Learn about how to set up custom knowledge bases and implement RAG systems and all that kind of stuff. But get out of the surveillance state ecosystem now while your exposure might be less. Like if you spend years inside these ecosystems, you just get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and the dependency will get greater and greater and greater and greater. That's what they want. I hope you choose not to do that and choose to invest in yourself. Controlling your data is always better than allowing someone else to control your data. So in any case, I really hope to see what you guys think about this. What are your ideas on it? Do you think you'll be able to convince family members who have adopted the use of AI models like this?
Like, you won't even be able to convince coworkers not to use AI models like this, right? At the end of the day, I dropped the video link in chat. This is a good video by Sam Bent. Make sure you go sub and all that to him. Let me close this. Boom.
To cut back or cut out or shift over to a different modality that allows them to perhaps still utilize AI, but in a different way or in a safe way.
But we've heard this with every piece of technology from guys like this since the beginning of time, right? And like, case in point, Discord's a great, and I even have Discord right here, right? Discord's a great example where like the convenience of it trumps the encryption of, say, TeamSpeak and the self-hosting capability, and everybody uses it. Therefore, if you don't use it, you're almost like you're basically at a disadvantage, right? Because if you don't use it, you don't have access to the same amount of information as the person next to you. And because the masses move towards that convenience, and because of the economical disadvantage of not utilizing services like this, people will just continue to use it. And you can have people like me and people like Sam here talking and making people aware of it. But at the end of the day, the fact is we still just keep going, running head first towards the cliff, right? Like lemmings. And I don't see it slowing down at all.
Right. What are some of the methodologies that you use to stay safe with things like local models and stuff like that. I'd love to hear about all that kind of stuff in the comments if you guys are up for it. In any case, thank you for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next video.
Cool. Great video. Yeah, make sure you guys go like it. That was cool. Thanks for sharing that, dude. You rock. I think that's going to cover it for me today, though. I will maybe play some video games over on Twitch. I think as far as the crypto content for today, unless you guys got something you want me to take a look at, I'm pretty much done. I covered everything that I wanted to cover for the day. I don't have much more. I did a poll on Flux versus Ergo from an interoperability perspective. I guess we could take a look at the results for that. I found the results interesting. Let me see if I can pull it up. So I said, which proof of work chains have the most interoperability at the moment? I can only really think of Run on Flux and Ergo. There's a lot of discussion lately by big crypto publications surrounding this topic. Ergo gets a big boost from Cardano. Flux has centralized services and VC funding boosts with its connections to Zelcore. Which do you think has a better chance for interoperability? Obviously, there is a carryover between the two, but just for fun, it looks like 64% voted for Ergo so far and 26% for Flux. I guess the question would be, you know, let's go to CoinMarketCap. I think the market is also choosing Ergo. I can't even open up CoinMarketCap. Is something exploding? We could go to Gecko. Let's see, Flux. And they have compare here too, right? No, that's just similar coins. Thought there was a compare, but let's look at the past year. Flux's trend is, I guess it says, is that right? No, that's not changing with that. Why does that not change? So for the year, it's down 70. Flux is down 73%. Let's take a look at Ergo. And for the year, Ergo is down 12% for the year. So Ergo is performing a little bit better than Flux. Past 30 days, Ergo's actually up. So seems like polling reflects the market pretty solidly there. Do I know anything about Metaplanet? No, I haven't looked at Metaplanet. Is that a crypto? I see stock for it. Let's see. Metaplanet shares jumped 22% after unveiling plans to buy $5.4 billion worth of Bitcoin, aiming to become the second largest Bitcoin holder among public companies. Stuff doesn't make any sense to me. Why is everybody doing this? How can you just have a company whose only existence is to own and hold Bitcoin? I don't get it. Like, I feel like it should be illegal if your only strategy is to hold, like if the only purpose of the business is just to hold Bitcoin, I feel like that shouldn't be allowed. I don't know. It's crazy to me. So apparently it's a Japanese investment firm, and its stock skyrocketed 12% on June 9th. The announcement came on June 6th via an update to the company's stock acquisition rights program, where Metaplanet unveiled its so-called 555 million plan, a major expansion from its previous goal of holding 21,000 Bitcoin. Under the new plan, Metaplanet aims to increase its Bitcoin holdings from 8,888 to 210,000 Bitcoin over the next 2.5 years. The company currently holds that much that we talked about, following recent purchases of 1,088 Bitcoin disclosed on June 2nd. The 555 million plan targets 100,000 Bitcoin by 2026, 210,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2027, and estimated total acquisition cost of $21 billion US. If executed, Metaplanet will become the second largest public Bitcoin holder, trailing only Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy, according to BitBo data. So there you go. What did they do beforehand? Hotels? I don't know if this is good for Bitcoin or ultimately bad for Bitcoin. It's just a gold rush, right? At the end of the day. It's just a gold rush. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's companies fully... Are there, like, companies whose only purpose is to hold custody gold and silver? I assume there are, right? That's for the price to go up. So it's similar, yes. But I don't even know, like, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, they're not contributing to society. So there are two types of people in this world, and it crosses over into companies as well. There's two types of people. There's producers and parasites. I think companies that purchase a limited supply asset are parasites. They don't produce anything, they're useless, and they shouldn't exist. Now, if your job is to transport gold from point A to point B for a service, then okay. But that's my thought. I think the MicroStrategies, the GameStops, and the Metaplanets are parasites. That's what I think. And I think there's a lot of people like that in the real world too. You know? We all have to balance that out, and I think like a balance of that is important. Like, I guess it's okay to have Bitcoin on the balance sheet, but what is the service you're providing to society that justifies your existence in the first place, right? Because at the end of the day, like, if you don't serve a purpose to produce and contribute to society, then like, I don't feel like that should be a valid business, right? All right, boys. So I'm going to shut this down. I'm debating. I'll probably continue streaming over on... yeah, I'll continue streaming over on Twitch. So everybody on YouTube, I'll be over on Twitch and Kick, and Twitter. And I'll cut this short on YouTube so that people only get crypto news and my editor can clip it. Thanks everybody for watching. All of the likes, ad revenue, shares, all that stuff on YouTube goes to a good cause. Oh, it looks like my pool went offline over here, so maybe we'll look at that on Twitch. I'll see you guys over there.